Hello, welcome to another episode of Business Unknown presented by BrightRock. I'm Dan Nicholl, and over the course of the 8 weeks in which the series is running, we're going to be meeting an assortment of South African business leaders, people who've taken on all manner of challenges during the course of their careers and done some pretty extraordinary things. They've had one or two bumps along the road, which are important for us to learn from, but they've also had great triumphs, and those we hope will be inspiring us at a time when South Africa has never needed inspiration more. The economy very much on the ropes. A lot of people wondering what the future holds, trying to work out where a horizon might be and when life might start getting back to something like normal, and with it, when the working environment, when the business world will get back on its feet as well. Last week we chatted to Greg Maloka, the radio maverick who's currently behind the empire that is Kaya FM. Today we head down to Cape Town and we meet somebody who has creative genius written over just about everything he has done. We know him principally as the man behind Design Indaba, which this year celebrates 25 years of bringing creative people together in all manner of formats and doing a terrific job therein. But he's got a whole pile of other endeavors, which is not bad considering when he started out, he wasn't planning to get into anything like where he finds himself today. So our second guest, week 2 of Business Unknown. Hello, Ravi Naidoo.
Greetings, Dan. Hi, good to be here.
It's lovely to have you along. You're looking particularly relaxed, which is fairly standard for Ravi Naidoo. I don't think I've ever seen you without a smile on face and looking like you're enjoying yourself. But even Ravi Naidoo, the eternal optimist, the confident, outgoing go-getter, must be feeling a little bit of the pinch that's affecting the world as a whole and South Africa in particular at the moment.
Oh, absolutely, Dan. I mean, I think what COVID has done for all of us is that it exposed underlying symptoms in our bodies and our comorbidities, but underlying symptoms as well in society and in our businesses. And so besides all else, it's been a massive dose of it's been a hubris killer. I mean, it's been something that is very, very humbling and sobering. And this has been a great time to recollect and kind of reframe what it is that we're doing. So, you'll find a bit more of a subdued Ravi Naidoo here for a change.
Of course, Ravi, you'll have a really good understanding of this space from 2 points of departure. The rampant entrepreneur that you are, that runs richly through your DNA. So you'll understand just how much stress the business environment is under. But there's also the actual virus, the medical perspective, because if we go back just a few years, we'd find Ravi Naidoo the medical student.
Yeah, and those were, reasonably trying times at UCT Med School, postgrad research, measuring fluxes of currents across pituitary cells, not exactly dinner party conversation, and but also completely aware of the tumultuous changes happening in the country. 1990, Madiba released from prison, and it was an impetus to kind of, as the country was reinventing itself, to go upon, start upon a personal reinvention. And I was very, very lucky. One letter changed my life. I wrote a letter to all the leading ad agencies. I wanted a detour and quite sharply. And I managed to inveigle myself into a job at Young and Rubicam, managing an account that they had just won, a pharmaceutical account, so I could go in and offer value immediately. And it just changed the trajectory of my life. I always hankered after the creative industries. In fact, I did 12 years of speech and drama prior to that while at school. I, studied my business, my science classes with as many art classes as I possibly could. And I mostly did science because it was a rock solid, dependable thing in the old apartheid era. And in about 1990, I thought, well, I want to make a detour and get into the creative industries. And that, was the best decision I made.
I suspect there'll be a lot of people listening, watching now, thinking, where I am, I've maybe lost my job, my business has hit a dead end. I can't see a future where I am as a result of COVID. You made such a radical change, you embraced it and you leapt into this brand new space. Part of the answer is writing a letter to everybody in your dream industry, clearly. But what else helped you to make that transition and allowed you to go into such a different direction and do so successfully?
It's an amalgam of things. It's never one thing. One feeling like you're a glorious underachiever. That's a big enough impetus. Not being able to run your household because they just recently got married, that would be an impetus. And also, just feeling that you really have to follow your passion. And I was hankering for a while after doing something creative. I was not meant to be, nailed to a lab stool in a far-flung corner of the laboratory, a complete social misfit. I'm gregarious. I needed to be in amongst people. And, it was a recognition of that. And it's a recognition of what will optimize you. And I was lucky to have kind of telegraphed that at some stage. And super, super lucky. You make your own luck, of course, but super, super lucky to impose myself on these two ad agencies, one of which wanted to send me on a graduate developmental program. And I said to them, I've already collected degrees that I don't know the relevance of, so I won't do that. And meanwhile, the others had just landed the pharmaceutical account. So that was lovely. But you have to put yourself in harm's way sometimes. And Mark Shuttleworth was saying that quite nice. He says, whenever you have to make these big decisions, it's hardest the night before. And you fret about it, you worry about it. But once you get in, you just start swimming. So I think it's just about giving yourself that chance and getting in.
I'm glad you mentioned Mark Shuttleworth, because his story is it's also a Ravi Naidoo story in so many ways, because you'd made your way into this space, you'd started your agency, you'd really gathered some momentum, and then you had the chance to send a South African into space. Now that's just fundamentally cool on so many different levels, and the fun part will have been the one that we've all seen and thought, gee, that looks awesome, but I'm guessing it was also a huge task, a huge challenge, a lot more to it than we would have seen just watching on. What was that whole experience like?
It was an unbelievable, goosebumpy, boy's own kind of dreamscape that even now I just have to pinch myself as to how it came to pass. And Mark is a legend. I mean, an absolute icon. And I knew him before it was fashionable to know him. I knew him early days when he was walking around my office in shorts and slops, connecting us to the proto-internet as it stood like in 1995. And then we would be in contact and he would track our progress. And we had started projects with Vodacom and I started the Design Indaba. But the one project that piqued his interest was we did this rally across Africa in 1999. We drove from the northern tip to the southern tip of Africa to promote investment in telecommunications. It was called the African Connection Rally. And he quite liked that, and he saw the huge halo around this entire event and the media leverage that came out of it. So he darkened my doorway soon after he sold his company, famously for $575 million in 2001, paddling out on the last canoe as the bombs were going off for the .com. He was so lucky. And anyway, he darkened my doorway and he says, hey, I've got this crazy idea. I want to go to space, and you guys seem to be the kind of people who could, manage the comms around it. So he just saw it as being a communications exercise at the time. And it became a lot more. And we became a de facto space agency for him, as the guys at the European Space Agency referred to it. We set up an office in Moscow. We started flight negotiations with Rosario Cosmos. So we did the legal stuff. And Mark went off to train and learn Russian and trained to be a cosmonaut. And then we created this kind of campaign and this package around it. And at the time, he was quite partial to promoting awareness around HIV/AIDS. And we suggested to him that maybe that was not the route. And we said to him, people are dying. We are very, very conscious of the issues about HIV/AIDS. Is there something else that we could do that is a bit more expansive, that's a lot more positive, way more optimistic, that could be a lot more solutions-oriented? So something as to how we could point to where growth could come from in South Africa. And given the platform of a flight to space, we chose math, science, and technology. And to promote that, and we created this beautiful brand, astride called HIP to be square, written as a formula, HIP2B superscript 2. And created an entire campaign that said it was cool to go do math, it was cool to study science. And Mark was able to do experiments in microgravity, giving scientists in Southern Africa the first opportunity to do experiments in microgravity. And then the communication campaign astride that, it was absolutely magical. And, Mark talking to Madiba and then connecting with ham radio and talking to students at schools from Khayelitsha to Chatsworth. It was an absolutely sensational, and he gave off so much of himself. And then subsequently, when he came back later that year, we had created this roadshow across the country, and we had these 2 Pantechnicons that just went across all 9 provinces, and we interacted with about 120,000 learners. And we created a bit of theater around it with a replica Soyuz capsule, a rapper MC, a graffiti artist, a DJ, and then Mark, and a mad scientist, and then Mark, telling them a bit about his story and what he learned from space. And that must go down as just like one of the most unbelievable projects. And just being there, crying myself a river, holding hands at Mission Control, Star City, Moscow, was just like one of the most magical experiences of my life. And Mark has gone on from there and done even more. I mean, the bloke's an absolute legend. And as a South African, I don't think he's gone a bit off the spotlight, but he's a national treasure.
Was there ever any envy with Mark going up? Did you ever wish you were the man sitting beside him in his spaceship?
Not at all. I think I'm just too yellow-livered and too scared to do that. I mean, I had so much of admiration for his training. You know, he would do these parabolic flights, and they are otherwise called the vomit comet, or spin around in something akin to a centrifuge. And I mean, his training was so darn arduous all through a Russian winter. I remember visiting in February, and the prevailing temperature was at about minus 35 degrees Celsius. We were staying at a place at Star City, which is pretty cool, called the Profilectorium. And none of what he did, some people had, the temerity to suggest it was a space tourist exercise. But Mark took this so seriously. He trained like a proper cosmonaut. He got so fiercely fit. And in order to be able to tolerate those kind of G-forces and to tolerate, that unique situation, you'd require a fair degree of training. And then over and above that, when you get up there, you've got this communications overhead, and then you've got to do experiments. So you're going to be a lab assistant up there. And he actually worked extremely hard in that time.
It's part of an extraordinary story, and as a one-off triumph, although it was over a period of time, it's definitely one of the highlights of your career. Probably the most sustained highlight, though, I would imagine, would be Design Indaba. 25 years this year. How did the idea for it come about? How did you create it? And did you think that you would, in the best possible way, give birth to the monster that you have that now plays such an international role in the design space?
It was purely accidental. And it was just really being responsive and listening to the kind of issues that we were hearing from the designers in Cape Town. I just started a company. I had started Interactive Africa. I was off to the races quite quickly. I was very lucky. I won my first pitch with Vodacom, and had Vodacom as a client for many, many years. And being reasonably solvent and having their cash flow just allowed me some opportunities to experiment in other spaces. And I always wanted to have this kind of hybrid company, not just be an agency to others, but also to do some indie stuff. And this represented the first indie project that I could do. And we were talking to some creative people in Cape Town, and we thought that, design is like the kind of Cinderella sector of the industry, and people kind of misconstrue what design is. They think it's about beautifying things. It's invariably thought to be decor, and they don't really realize that it's a lot more sublime than that. And it's the skill or facility to improve the quality of life. But the other charming thing about it was to find a project that was about growing the cake and not necessarily your slice of the cake. And so we were asking, what could this grow the cake project be? And the idea came that we were so wholly dependent on commodities in Africa generally, and specifically in South Africa, with gold, diamonds, platinum, coal, etc., that we hadn't really gone upstream. And we hadn't got to the space where we could leverage ideas and understand that this is the prime real estate and not 3 kilometers below Joburg. And to understand that the 21st century is going to be about the ideas economy. And in fact, we were leaving so much of value on the table by not converting the raw materials into the beneficiated value-added product. And the X factor in that conversion is design. So we wanted to advance this case for design being the X factor in the economy and giving us the facility, that skill to understand this kind of transformation, the alchemy of an idea into reality, of a commodity into a value-added product or a brand. And we wanted to do this by fast-tracking South Africa and going to school on the experiences of people who have gone before us. So instead of starting at first base, maybe we could start at third base, and we could leapfrog South Africa. Could we learn from Sir Terence Conran as to how he started in a post-Second World War London habitat that became a global success? So we set a very, very high bar for it. It was never going to be a parochial, provincial, South African local gig. It was almost always going to be something of global scale. We said that much. And it was an after-hours project. It was not our day job. So a bunch of mates got together after hours and we conjured up this thing. So I did this every 2 years, 95, 97, 99, 2001. By 2001, and each time it grew by an order of magnitude. By 2001, it was absolutely heaving, filling up the Opera House of the Artscape Theatre. And we realized we're onto a real live one here. And we set up an entire infrastructure to support it. And it's happened every year since. And it's grown to become the world's biggest design conference. And that's been really, really neat. And so what we did as a mandate for this event said we'll do 3 days of talking and then 362 days of doing. We'll have a think tank and we'll have a do tank. And that was the whole notion at the start. And so Design Indaba has subsequently spawned over 200 projects across the country of varying scales, from being catalysts for the new Museum of Contemporary African Art, to building terraces of houses in a squatter camp, to building this gorgeous arch for arch on the oldest avenue in Cape Town to celebrate the life of Archbishop Tutu and celebrate our Constitution. So all of these things have become and have been extruded out of Design Indaba, where it's become not just a gathering and an event, it's become a mandate for action. And that's me. It's just been my university. I've learned so much in the last 25 years, and I'm so deeply respectful of the platform. And as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to be coaxing it and nurturing it and nudging it along. So I'm looking forward to welcoming you, Dan, to the 50th, which should be in the year 2045.
I shall put it in my diary. I think I'm free that afternoon.
It's a great party as well, that's for sure. We do it.
With Ravi Naidoo involved, I have no doubt it's a great party. And it's an approach that encompasses pretty much everything you do. You have a huge amount of enjoyment. You've also learned, as you say, an enormous amount. It's been your life's university course. In terms of that learning, I'm fascinated to know, from a very personal perspective, what's been the absolute high point of the Design Indaba experience, and what's been the real low point, the one where you thought, I just can't believe this is actually happening?
I think it's almost always, the event's gorgeous and it's done so well and it's won like beautiful accolades and it was voted best conference in the world at the Oscars of the events industry in Barcelona, the IBTM Awards. And so all of those things are great. And those are qualifiers. But the winner for me always is where the ideas and the genius leaves the room and settles in community and settles in the high street. And it's about really the impact. So I think the impact for me has just been magical. Nothing we've done in 25 years would come remotely close to that emotionally charged Saturday morning. And it was definitely the most wholesome thing we've ever done. So as regards highlights, the Design Indaba 10 by 10 low-cost housing project. Again, as regards lowlights, there have been a few. Probably the biggest disappointment was, we were progenitors of what is now the Museum of Contemporary African Art. And we did all of that hard running, right from the initial time that Thomas Heatherwick came to Design Indaba in 2006. And we chatted to 3 sets of owners of the V&A and carried the idea across the threshold each time. But for most part, there was a dream that it was going to be a Design Indaba museum. So that didn't come to pass. I feel like ideas, that's not a problem at all. Ideas are like energy. They're never destroyed. They're just transformed from one shape to another. I still carry a torch for doing something that would be a space that celebrates design in Cape Town. But I think the lesson learned is that maybe next time out, I'll do it on my own terms, not as a tenant of a JSE juggernaut, but to do it in maybe from a scale point of view, something that I could get my hands around a lot better, and do it where we have title. And the one lesson I learned from that is that the biggest beneficiary of us cultural activists going in and doing a piece of urban acupuncture is actually the property developer and the absolute uplift in the property prices all around it. So I reckon when the creative activists come back next to do something around design, maybe they should benefit from the uplift themselves. And hopefully that will be Project 2.0.
All of which suggests that there is still a long way to go in your Design Indaba journey and many, many ideas you'd like to transform into reality.
Oh, we're just starting up.
And yet it's not just that, because you have so many other interests. Probably the most high profile one at the moment, you decided to spend a little money and you signed up a couple of interns called Paul Harris and Michael Jordan to work for you. And you decided to make the internet rain down across South Africa.
Oh, that's been a lovely journey. And it happened at the right time in my life. And it was a great opportunity to even diversify out of this primary focus around creative industries and design. It was about 2014. Got a phone call from Paul, an absolute legend, maverick. You could see that, sparky as ever. The gentleman just turned 70 right now and is chairing one of South Africa's most vibrant startups. Note to ourselves, Dan, that's what we want to be doing when we're 70. But at 2014, he called me around to Element House and he says, hey, we're having a bit of a brainstorm session. And why don't you come round and join? And I had no idea as to what it was about. And then we go into a gorgeous wood-paneled library at the Element House and we see it was a room full of people, including some international consultants. And they regaled us with a story of this kind of opportunity that was emerging to buy a company that had some spectrum assets. And, I had 16 years worth of experience with the kind of comms and strategy and marketing around Vodacom. And I could offer some value. And I was inflamed by the prospect and wanted in kind of immediately and managed to, certainly don't have the firepower for Paul Harris or Michael Jordan, absolute weenie bopper by comparison, but took everything I had, sold an apartment, liquidated the share portfolio. And I basically was so convinced that this was going to be something worthy. I went, I'm all in. And it's been a most amazing ride. But it comes from, it's such a wonderful notion. I was lucky enough to name the company Rain. And in naming it, the reason for that name is reasonably profound. And it's not just a cool brand name, but about what it stands for. And we said at the outset, we wanted to make access to data almost like a social justice project. We wanted to be the fastest and the cheapest if we could be. And we wanted to be like Rain, in the sense that Rain does not discriminate between Bishop's Court and Khayelitsha. Rain is pretty egalitarian and democratic. And we wanted to try to be like so in terms of how we made access to data. And we've been building. And it's been quite a task. We have a sprawling subcontinent. We decided to focus on urban areas. And our big punt has been on 5G. And the rollout has happened now in Johannesburg. And just this week, 5G was launched in pockets in and around Cape Town. And we happened to buy an asset that had the only real spectrum to leverage a proper 5G network. So we think that, everything's set fair. It's been a long journey. If you think 2014 to 2020, none of these projects that I mentioned, from a Design Indaba to etc., are just add water instant gratification projects. And, it's 6 years on and we haven't seen a single dividend yet and probably not likely to for another 2 to 3 years. But boy, oh boy, we're already getting a most amazing reverb from the fact that we could say to you without any fear of contradiction that it's, as regards 5G, it's the fastest and it's the cheapest internet you're going to get in South Africa.
That, coupled with the story of the man in space, the story of Design Indaba, the story of this medical student who decided he needed to unleash his creative and set aside his doctor's bag, has led up to the most important question I have to ask you, Ravi, and it's a question that a lot of people are asking themselves at the moment. The immediate future, where do we stand? How do we navigate as difficult and uncertain time as we've probably ever had in South Africa? And this is a country that's had some difficult and uncertain times.
Yeah.
If you are Ravi Naidoo now and you're trying to balance a sense of optimism with a sense of the pragmatic, some advice to the business owner who's looking ahead, can't see an horizon, let alone what is on it, and is thinking, how do I get through these next couple of years?
Yeah, important questions. And I mean, there are things that happen out there that are positively draining mentally and emotionally. And, issues around corruption right now, where, money for our response to the pandemic is being stolen. And it starts to make you worry that, corruption is not a bug, it's the feature. And it's something that we need to talk truth to power about. And we really, really need to, staunch this because it could really steal our future. But I think, it's been a very sobering time. And I would probably break it down into 3 areas. I think personally, I made a few decisions. The one thing is to get fit. I think coronavirus has highlighted the importance of being fit. Those of us that have been really stricken have had comorbidities. And, some of these things, we could probably help to mitigate against. And diet helps and exercise helps. So I've actually used this kind of time to, regain a level of fitness. I'm probably back to the kind of fighting weight I was when I started Design Indaba. So, that's really reasonably cool. I think it's very, very hard to earn a crust right now. I think it's been particularly difficult, even for our company. We're not raising an invoice every single day. And so we thought, how do you still remain relevant? So I thought that at this particular point in time, rather than being too distraught about not being able to run a business as you used to run it, rather start to respond to the crisis du jour, the crisis of the day. And so we've been busying ourselves in the last 3 months with projects that are in response to the pandemic. We did a project with local manufacturers, notably Polo South Africa, made 500,000 masks that were distributed to commuters around Cape Town through the City of Cape Town's disaster management unit. We worked with 2 NGOs in Cape Town and a Design Indaba speaker. We had launched this at Design Indaba and created this new backpack that rolls out into becoming a sleeping bag. It's a new product that was launched at DI called Shelter Bag. And we've since distributed about 500 thus far to the homeless in Cape Town because, the winter weather is upon us. And we are trying to keep the people who are somewhat displaced in this time warm on the streets. So I think, finding some purpose in this time to respond to it, I think we're going to find even wider issues around inequality, and anything we could do to try and help that and close the gap is something that we really, really should spend our time doing. I think the other part for it is to just maintain your mental well-being. And I find one of the things that's really helped me is to surround myself with kindred spirits and people who are optimistic as well, and being assisting in projects like so. I took a walk up Table Mountain the other day with 3 young entrepreneurs. Met them at Design Indaba. They were sitting in the audience, and they developed this new project where they do a version of a Nespresso pod, but they do a South African one with local roasters, but in a compostable pod, because this Nespresso pods are notoriously ecologically unfriendly. And they do this with a byproduct of the sugarcane industry called bagasse. And so once you've had the pod, you can toss it into your flower bed. And loved it so much. And in this time, been venturing them, and even decided that in this little time now to set up a fledgling investment play, which I'm calling DIVA, Design Indaba Venture Accelerator, to just find these beautiful little green shoots out there and to give them both some mentorship, some advice, and wherever I can, a little bit of coin to help them along the way. I think in terms of family, it's just been the most amazing time to regroup and to really relish this time together. This was the longest time my nuclear family was together for as long as I can remember. I got my son in on the last flight in from New York, and just being together has been amazing. And I think, one of the things we try to do in this time is start to plot a few more things and to start to plan a longer horizon and plan projects that will just, kind of catapult us forward and give us things to look forward to. There's these guys who spoke at Design Indaba some years ago, and all of a sudden, we could be obsessed with the new. But so much about what we need to do in the world right now is to fix the old as well. Cleaning up databases, sorting out the websites, sorting out all those kind of back-end issues that you don't normally get to do in the whole humdrum and the crazy sprint that's your regular day job. I think it's also a great time to reaffirm purpose and to ask yourself why we're in it. There's a quiet time to use the solitude and to meditate upon why we're doing what we're doing. Tempered somewhat and very sober, but on the whole, still quite optimistic. And I just hope that, from a South African point of view, there is a bit of a political malaise, and there are some issues that do not exactly cover us in glory. And I just hope to God that our leadership can pull things together. And the thing that imperils our nation is really corruption. And I hope we could fix that. But if we get that right, all bets are on. We've got absolutely everything to play for. This is just one of the most beautiful places on the planet, and I absolutely adore it. I love our people. I love this space, and we should, if we do this thing right, we should really regain some of that kind of lofty vision we had in 1994. We could really become a pilot project for the world in terms of what South Africa is really. That should be, our kind of motto. But at the moment, we've shifted the algebra to the lowest common denominator, as opposed to the highest possible multiple, and we need to give South Africa a stretch again.
Now would be a good time to press pause, to rewind, and to go through those words of Ravi Naidoo again, because you got some life lessons, you got some business lessons, you got some very personal reflection, and you got a few family values thrown in for good measure as Ravi Naidoo sums up his vision of where we are and where we are going to go. His journey has been an extraordinary one, from medical student through to the face, really, of design in South Africa via Design Indaba, with some pretty cool side streets along the way as well, such as that mission to space and his current work with RAIN. All told, a fairly honest appreciation of the tough times we're in, but also, I think, a flicker of hope and some suggestions of how we all might be able to do a little better to help ourselves to get through the difficult times ahead. So Ravi Naidoo, thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing so much of yourself. And thank you for giving us some much needed inspiration on Business Unknown.
Thank you, Dan. It's such a pity we couldn't be together. I would have imagined that after we finish this interview, we'd have decamped to the wine cellar. But here we are, and I look forward to seeing you in person again shortly.
So there we go. I can't wait. I'm going to hit Ravi Naidoo's cellar just as soon as I can, and look forward to my invitation in 25 years' time to getting to Design Indaba. I'm Dan Nicholl. This has been Business Unknown. Join us again next week with BrightRock as we catch up with another of our entrepreneurial and adventurous South African leaders and get a little more advice for these troubling times. Goodbye.